Hey folks, Double RPG here, and I'm here to deliver my 2 cents on this particular subject because it's been kind of something that I wanted to bring up for quite some time now, and I've been kind of holding back off on it, but when this news break out about a game having a certain feature that's not going to, break the mold of more games in the future, this is something that I feel like I need to say and should say to all of you. Now, first of all, I want to give a disclaimer and say that everything in Double RPG Two-Cents videos, even though that the stories I talk about are based on factual news stories or on opinion pieces, for that matter, my show is still about delivering my own opinion. So, before you jump the gun and call me a hypocrite for my beliefs, just listen to what I have to say. Because what I am going to say is based on what I believe. And that's the same thing with people like Alpha Omega Sin and even Gaijin Goomba. When they talk about things, or they talk about things in the news that pertains to gaming, then they have to deliver their 2 cents on why this or that is either a good or a bad idea. So yeah, this is the same thing of what's going to happen right now. So for those of you who are going to jump the gun on this early, then don't do anything until you hear about what I have to say. Now, we all heard the story last week, or about a few days ago, when I think Nintendo, Team Ninja, and Tecmo Koei, when they broke the news about Hyrule Warriors, the new spin-off game based on the Zelda franchise, or the Legend of Zelda franchise, and Hyrule Warriors is going to have the traditional voice acting approach that we've heard in Zelda games ever since Ocarina of Time. So you will actually hear characters give their expressions and not even speak in dialogue or anything like that. Or you can hear characters have that sort of approach where they say, hey, listen, like Navi does in Ocarina of Time. So yeah, there's that with what Hyrule Warriors is going to be doing. So for those of you who are wondering if Hyrule Warriors was going to have legit voice acting this time around, well, you guys can rest assured because your hopes have been answered right there. But for me personally, since this is a spin-off game, I'm particularly okay with it. But if it was a main series game, then I probably would raise kind of a stink about it. But here's why. And here's the reason why I feel that future games in the Zelda franchise, particularly in the main series canon, why games in the future should incorporate voice acting in the games from now on. And what I want to start off is that the Zelda series has been around since the days of the NES, where we had The Legend of Zelda that started out back in 1986 on the NES, and it built up into a huge franchise, and we got the most recent release last year with A Link Between Worlds. And the one thing that all Zelda games, even in the spin-off fashion, had in common was that they didn't have any voice acting whatsoever. And, past games like from the NES, the SNES, Game Boy, and and the Nintendo 64, I can see why games wouldn't be able to have voice acting in those particular areas, because the technology within those systems were not that really high, or the data space within the cartridges, or the whatever they are, in the past pieces of hardware were not that very high to where you can actually hold more data to allow there being voice acting or any other type of cool bells and whistles that you wanted to add to the game. So yeah, I can understand that back then. But when you take a look at games now, the voice acting in most video games have been very quintessential when it comes to the AAA or big budget titles. And when you take a look at the Legend of Zelda series, it's still a big budget franchise. Just take a look at the games that are being made for it. From the past up until now. All those games that have been made in the main series have really high production values. So why is it that Nintendo is not incorporating voice acting in Zelda games is just beyond me. And another reason why I say this is because, if Nintendo continues to stick with the same tradition in the future, probably in the next 10 years, then I'm afraid that same tradition of where there's hardly any voice acting is going to run dry. Let me give you a really good example. Now, for those of you who are fans of the TV show The Simpsons, you remember back when the show started, Bart Simpson always had that traditional shtick where he would say, "Eat my shorts," or anything like that, to where he portrayed his cool and kind of smart aleck type of personality. And while he still has that personality as of today, they got rid of that catchphrase around 1992 or 1993 because, the creators of the show realized that the whole catchphrase was getting tiring. And I feel this is kind of the same way with what the Zelda series has been doing for quite a long time now. And when I talk about this type of thing is kind of similar to the whole fiasco with what happened with Metroid Other M, where the story and Samus's character, they were built from the Zero Mission prequel manga, which I mentioned in my review of Metroid Other M. But is the whole thing with being built upon the canon of the retcon comic dumb and stupid? Yes, but guess what? They still happened, where Sakamoto and Team Ninja took that base canon, and where, Samus had post-traumatic stress disorder because Ridley was coming back from the dead, even though he was a clone, but Samus thought he was coming back from the dead, essentially. And when you take a look at the Prime games, some of you might say, oh, well, those games are still canon in the series, and Samus didn't even need to talk. Well, yes, that's true, but you gotta remember, the Prime series did not really tie into the main story of Metroid, in which Other M is a part of. The main series, the original Metroid, Metroid 2, The Return of Samus, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Other M. The Prime games, they had their own story, where that whole element of Phase-On was really, really bad, which could potentially destroy the universe because of Metroid Prime. The main antagonist throughout the whole series has been around, harassing Samus in the Dark Samus form. So, yeah, that didn't really have any tie-in to the overall main canon and that of Samus's character, which really she didn't even portray any character. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but, Zelda games, they too had mangas. But the thing is that Link and all the characters actually spoke in dialogue. And whenever they spoke in dialogue, especially with Link, he would always have a personality within him. And the future games in the series after Ocarina of Time, ever since like the Wind Waker up until now, Link has been given somewhat of a personality. I think this is Nintendo's way of trying to humanize Link more, because before he didn't even have any character that we can understand if he was either angry, happy, sad, or that kind of thing. And it was okay by our standards back then. I can kind of get that. But since we're at this day and age where the game, where gaming consoles are getting really high in the technology, wouldn't it make sense that Link would be able to actually have a speaking voice to where his personality can just brim throughout the entire thing? And speaking of stories, Zelda games, as of right now, they become far more story-driven than past installments. So, I just don't understand why we don't have a game where not only just Link, but other characters can actually speak in dialogue, and you can actually, respect them for being, humanized characters based on the type of voices that they have. And for those of you who say that the CDI games were involved or had Nintendo's affiliation towards them, or even the cartoon series, well, you can just stop right there, because you just really, really need to know the whole backstory of what happened with that series. The Zelda CDI games and the cartoon series had no affiliation or involvement from Nintendo whatsoever, as they gave both Deke and Phillips more creative freedom to do whatever they want with those, however they portrayed The Legend of Zelda, and they just created the abominations that we know as of right now, although there's still a good following for the original cartoon series, I might add. And, I kind of think that Nintendo, they possibly might want to go through this change if their investors meeting from back in January was any indication with how Iwata wanted to bring change within the company. And I think this is his first step in wanting to bring the series in a more positive light, or even Aonuma, the current head producer of the series, since we've been hearing bits and pieces of characters with their emotions and that kind of stuff and their facial expressions that's been appearing in 3D Zelda games. So I think that approach of what they're doing is that they actually want to make the characters more relatable and enjoyable for their portrayals, since, the more games that come out that become more story driven. And I know there's always that potential where risks can ruin the franchise, or it could actually benefit it for the better. And I personally agree with that. I mean, when you take a look at the Prime games, going back to the Metroid Prime series, that was a huge risk when taking the series from 2D to 3D, because we've been comfortable with the 2D Metroid games from the original Metroid on the NES up until Metroid Fusion, which I think the Prime games came out after Fusion, since everything has just been in 2D. But when Retro Studios took that approach with making it 3D and non-linear, and where you can explore like the planets of Talon 4 in the other games for that matter, it actually proved to be a very phenomenal success. And Metroid Prime, as of right now, is possibly like the highest sold Metroid game to date. So I think Nintendo can also take that risk again if they find the right people to voice the characters, not only just Link and not only Zelda, but for also others like Ganon or Impa or some of those others that have been very famous throughout the Zelda series up until now. If they take that approach to where they're very careful with who they portray as their characters, then I think they could do just fine. I mean, if you take a look at games now from Nintendo, kind of like Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS, you can actually hear that the characters actually speak with really good voice actors, and it actually proved to be really well done. So having games where the voice cast know how to portray the characters in a positive light, then I think that will be the best benefit for the Zelda series if it were to move forward. Now, this may not happen on Wii U, but then again, I'm still going to enjoy the Wii U game regardless because I really love the gameplay in the Zelda game, so I'm still going to enjoy it regardless, but I'm just going to be disappointed if Nintendo still keeps in touch with their past selves based on how they are portraying their games as of recent in terms of the Zelda franchise. Now, the last thing that I actually want to bring up, and this is probably something that's been bugging me to this very day that I cannot just figure out. Why is it that video game characters, especially silent protagonists or silent protagonists who are famous, are not allowed to speak? Why is that? I mean, back then, whenever we played video games from the NES up until like the Super Nintendo, characters didn't even have any dialogue, like I mentioned, because of the technical limitations. But now we've come to this age where characters actually portray themselves in a more positive light if they can actually speak. I mean, if you want a recent example of a really good protagonist from a franchise that actually spoke with a really good voice, then take a look at like David Hayter, who portrayed Solid Snake and even Big Boss in the Metal Gear games before Kiefer Sutherland actually took the role of Solid Snake because of Kojima's direction. People really enjoyed him for portraying the character because he actually managed to bring that character in a positive light that everybody can relate to. I mean, it's not like this guy who's this head honcho or who believes he's all tough and has this really bad attitude. I mean, there are characters who have relatable personalities or personalities that we can really enjoy that actually have become very iconic characters. So I don't get it when people who have become really famous are not allowed to speak. Just why is that? I mean, why is Link, who has become this hero, who has developed somewhat of this personality, is not allowed to have a voice? Why is it that the other characters in the Zelda games are not allowed to speak? I mean, this is kind of the same thing with Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, when you started out with Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, he didn't really have any voice for his character, not until Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast, in which some people actually praised Ryan Drummond in the later voice actors for the character. So why is it that Sonic and the characters in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise are not allowed to speak? Why are people not accepting the fact where Sonic the Hedgehog can be cool even in his Sonic Boom form? In the Metroid series, why is Samus Aran not allowed to be attractive? And why is she not allowed to speak? Even though she has portrayed that she actually has spoken in dialogue because of her speaking in monologue most of the time, but that was because it was all in text. But she was still speaking from her beliefs. You know, this is a lot of things that I really don't understand, and especially with the voice acting part, I have been wrestling around and figuring out why it is that most people will not even accept this change. You know what? In any future game in the main Zelda series done by Nintendo, when they announce that they are putting legit traditional voice acting to where the characters actually speak from text, I welcome that. I welcome hearing the voice of somebody voicing Zelda, or even Link, or even Ganon, because it shows that the characters in the Zelda series, they're more than just characters who don't talk. They're more than portrayed as heroes or villains. They're more than just silent protagonists or silent villains. And a lot of people, I know some people tend to agree with me on this subject, and when they talk about characters that should speak, they kind of have the same treatment, saying that, you know, if we continue to be in the same shtick, then we're not going to be able to see the series evolve into something for the better. And I've seen characters who've actually who've actually spoken, and like Solid Snake and Mario are actually brought into a more positive light, and people actually really enjoy the voices of those characters for what they sound like. And, if we come to that point to where everybody just says, okay, I really accept how the characters sound in most video games, and if we all come to that conclusion to where we actually start to believe in that motif, then why the hell does it really even matter, or why is it an illogical thought with what Link should be or what he should sound like? We all are different. We all have personality. We all speak. So I don't understand why, when characters who do not speak, they're just kind of treated like, just like dogs whenever they try to do something like that. I really don't get why people have to get in a huffy tissy fit when people or when characters are brought into a new direction. Why is it that they have to be treated like garbage for that matter? You know what? I don't know. But as time goes on, and if we see these characters, especially like in the Zelda games, being brought into a more positive light, people are still going to despise the fact because they just don't want to accept change. They just show that they're really immature in accepting that. And as long as that continues to exist, then I really don't think that gaming is going to be the same as what it's going to be. I mean, I still think that the Legend of Zelda series, the main games in general going forward, should still have the character speak, but if people cannot accept that, then that just shows their immaturity, and it just really shows how fickle-minded that we as gamers have become, and that will be our own hubris if that continues to go on down the future. But anyway, that's all I have to say on this matter. I mean, for God's sakes, it's just, that's one of the many reasons why I just don't get, people saying that, oh, Link shouldn't even talk because he doesn't even have any personality. Any type of personality that we do is portrayed on our actions in the gameplay. Well, that may be true, but when you take a look at recent Zelda games as of now, the characters that we come to know and love in newer iterations have actually portrayed some characters. So we need to stop accepting what it is that these characters should be or should have remained and start accepting him as, a different kind of character. Because that just shows how neutral, respectful, and, very sincere you are towards those characters. But unless if we come to that point in the future where we can actually accept that type of thing, then we can get to equality even amongst the silent protagonists or silent characters a lot faster. But, that's just me. But anyway, that's all I have to say on this matter. So I want to hear what you guys think. Do you believe that future Zelda games in the main series should have traditional voice acting or legit voice acting from voice actors in the long run? Or do you think there should be something else that should work in order for the series to actually have or do not have voice acting? But anyway, be sure to rate this video as well as leaving your positive and negative feedback down in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more content coming from me in the future that you won't even find anywhere else. And for those of you who did not pass judgment in this while I was speaking in this video, thank you. But anyway, guys, I have to get going now as I have another 2 cents video that I need to work on. So until next time, this is Double RPG signing off by saying Godspeed and game on, gamers. Have a good one.
You